In tonight's news edition, Jordan and Kuwait agree on steps to regulate military cooperation. Syrian rebels storm a prison in Dir'a and free inmates amid tensions on the border with the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. And the crisis in Ukraine's Crimea region escalates, with NATO's Secretary General accusing Russia of trying to redraw the map of Europe. Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. Jordan and Kuwait agreed on steps to regulate cooperation between their armed forces. The two sides signed minutes of a meeting of the Higher Joint Jordanian-Kuwaiti Committee for Military Cooperation. The ceremony at the Armed Forces General Headquarters was attended by Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mish'al al-Zaban, and visiting Kuwaiti Army Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Abdulrahman al-Uthman. Prime Minister and Defense Minister Abdullah Mansour discussed with the Kuwaiti Chief of the General Staff ways of cementing bilateral cooperation in various fields. Mansour emphasized the strong ties between Jordan and Kuwait, as well as the kingdom's interest to further promote cooperation. Jordan, he said, appreciated Kuwait's continued support to the kingdom, including Kuwait's contribution to a $5 billion Gulf grant to Jordan, which will be used to implement a number of developmental projects. The lower house endorsed a number of articles of the temporary 2002 agriculture law. In a session attended by Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour and cabinet ministers, lawmakers deleted a paragraph added by the House Agriculture Committee on pasture land swap with other lands. Other articles in question also included the introduction of stiffer penalties to curb encroachment upon forests and pasture land and state land in general, either by construction of buildings or installation of them. They also approved other penalties against infringement of pasture land by tilting or cultivating them or building structures or facilities. Also during the session, House Speaker Atif Tarawne commented on reports that a lawmaker had resigned, saying he had not received any such request in writing. Jordan's United Nations ambassador, His Highness Prince Zaid bin Raed, condemned Israel's killing of Jordanian judge Ra'ad Z'ater. The judge was shot dead by Israeli soldiers as he was crossing the King Hussein Bridge crossing into the West Bank 9 days ago. The permanent ambassador said during Security Council consultations on the Middle East that Jordan's government and people had denounced the killing. He said Jordan was awaiting the result of a joint investigation into the killing and would weigh up its option afterwards. The envoy said Jordan, in its capacity as custodian of holy shrines in occupied Jerusalem, has raised at the Security Council recurrent Israeli raids and assaults against the Haram Sharif Mosque compound. Israel's Jerusalem municipality approved plans to build 184 new homes in 2 Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank. A municipality spokeswoman said the local planning committee had approved requests by private contractors for the construction of 144 homes in Har Humma and 40 dwellings in Pisgat Ziv. The 2 settlements are in a part of the West Bank that Israel annexed to Jerusalem after occupying the territory in 1967. The annexation was not recognized internationally. The latest settlement expansion scheme drew anger from Palestinians engaged in statehood talks. Hanan Ashrawi, a senior member of the Palestine Liberation Organization, said Israel is trying to derail U.S.-sponsored peace talks in which the future of settlements are a major issue. Underlining tension overshadowed the peace talks after Israeli troops shot dead a Palestinian teenager in the occupied West Bank. The family of 15-year-old Yusuf Shawamra said he was killed after he went to pick wild plants. A military spokeswoman said he was shot after he and 2 other youths were spotted tampering with a security fence near the village of Deir al-Asal. She said soldiers had called on them to stop and had fired warning shots into the air. But his family contested the army claim, saying he was killed in cold blood. Palestinians say Israeli forces have killed 53 Palestinians and injured almost 900 since the resumption of peace talks last July. They accuse Israel of deliberately stirring up tensions. Syrian rebels took control of the central prison on the outskirts of the southern city of Dir'a and freed dozens of inmates. Elsewhere, one person was killed and 7 others were wounded when Israeli airstrikes hit Syrian military sites near the occupied Golan Heights. This report has more on the latest escalation.
Escalation in the Syrian conflict, but this time on another front. Israel launched airstrikes against Syrian military sites in response to a roadside bombing attack in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights that wounded 4 Israeli soldiers. But both sides signaled they are not seeking a further confrontation. The Syrian army said one of its soldiers was killed and 7 others wounded in the air raids. An armed forces statement said the strikes targeted 3 sites near the town of Quneitra. The targets included a Syrian military headquarters, a training facility, and artillery batteries on the Syrian-held side of the Golan Heights. The attack came less than a month after the Lebanese Hezbollah group accused Israel of carrying out an airstrike on one of its bases on the Lebanon-Syria border. Israel announced the air raids and delivered a message of deterrence to President Bashar al-Assad.
Our policy is very clear. We hurt those who hurt us, and we also thwart as much as we can, transfer of arms at sea, air and land. From time to time we are required to carry out aggressive operations, as we have just done, in order to ensure the calm.
The flare-up along the Golan border came as fighting persisted across Syria. In the southern city of Dir'a, rebels freed dozens of inmates after seizing a prison. Fighting for the jail had gone on for more than 50 days before rebels took it. 6 rebel fighters were killed in the fighting. In the northern city of Aleppo, tensions have been especially high in and now Arsal. The combat came after Syrian forces and the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah recaptured the border town of Yabrud from rebels. Syrian government forces, backed by Hezbollah, seized Ras Al Ain, a village southwest of Yabrud, and rockets suspected to have come from Syrian territory fell near the Lebanese border town of Qa'. Hala Dababne for the News at 10.
The Syrian Foreign Ministry condemned the United States' decision to suspend operations of Syria's embassy in Washington and consulates in other cities. It said the decision was a violation of international diplomatic conventions. Moscow called the U.S. move worrying and disappointing. However, Washington said the mission's closure did not constitute a break of diplomatic ties with Syria despite failed peace initiatives to end the conflict in the Arab country.
140,000 people killed, more than 10,000 children, millions of refugees, millions of internally displaced people, people attacked by their own government with gas, people tortured and killed by the thousands. We just felt the idea that this embassy is sitting here with representation that we could take seriously is an insult. And we closed it. It's that simple.
2 Egyptian army officers were killed in a shootout with members of a Sinai-based militant group. The Interior Ministry said 5 militants were killed and 4 arrested when the military and police raided a weapons storage facility. The fighters belonged to Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis, one of Egypt's most active militant organizations. Security sources said gunfire erupted during a raid on a militant safe house where the men were hiding in Qalubiya province north of Cairo. They said an army colonel and brigadier general, both bomb disposal experts, were killed. Security sources said the militants' targets were linked to a March 15 attack by gunmen who killed 6 army officers near Cairo. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen called the Ukraine crisis NATO's most pressing security challenge. He accused Russia of trying to redraw the map of Europe. The White House condemned Russian moves to seize Ukrainian military installations, saying they are creating a dangerous situation. Russian troops stormed Ukraine's naval headquarters in the Crimean port of Sevastopol and raised their flag. This report has more on the situation.
A calm mood prevails in and around Crimea's main city, Simferopol. It followed recent violence and a fresh Russian takeover of Ukraine's naval headquarters and the port city. Inside Simferopol, Ukrainian soldiers have refused to leave their posts as Russian and Crimean flags flew side by side on top of the Crimean government building. Simferopol residents endorsed the Russian takeover, expressing hope their new ruler would improve their lives.
Я жду нормальной, здоровой жизни.
I'm hoping for a normal, decent life without war and problems that we have had in the past 23 years. Finally, there's a master in Crimea. I mean the president of the Russian Federation.
Crimeans voted at the weekend to leave Ukraine and join Russia, and the peaceful handover of military facilities to Moscow's control has been a major concern after yesterday's killing of a Ukrainian serviceman. Ukrainian presidential hopeful Vitaly Klitschko urged a full withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the Crimean Peninsula.
Был и остается частью Украины.
Crimea has been and remains a part of Ukraine. Now it's a temporary occupied territory. The Ukrainian authorities should make a responsible decision to protect people and lives of our citizens, soldiers and officers who remained faithful to their oath to the Ukrainian people, but now are surrounded by the army of occupiers, as well as patriots who will be forced to temporarily leave the peninsula.
Meanwhile, Russian parliament prepares to ratify the Crimea annexation law. The Crimean leaders were greeted as heroes. Bouquet decked the room and deputies wore black and orange ribbons, symbolizing pride in the Russian military. Russian lawmakers set out plans to ratify the treaty despite threats of further sanctions from the United States and European Union. Britain warned Russian President Vladimir Putin over Ukraine, saying Russia could be expelled from the G8.
The referendum in the Crimea is illegitimate and illegal. It was spatchcocked together in 10 days and held at the point of a Russian Kalashnikov. This cannot be accepted or legitimized by the international community. I think it's important we move together with our allies and partners, and I think we should be discussing whether or not to expel Russia permanently from the G8 if further steps are taken.
Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi called for sanctions on Russia to be gradual and reversible. And amid the rising tensions, France's Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said Europe proposed to send observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to Crimea to help calm tensions. Farah Ajlouni for the news at 10.
The unexplained fate of the Malaysian Airlines plane has thrown the spotlight on some satellite technologies. This technology will make it easier in future for authorities to track and communicate with aircraft over water and uninhabited areas. The plane vanished 11 days ago with 239 people on board. Investigators believe it most likely flew into the southern Indian Ocean. Chinese relatives vented their anger over little information on the fate of their loved ones on board the airliner. This report has more.
The wait for news on the location of the missing Malaysian jetliner is taking a terrible toll on the loved ones of passengers at this point, and their emotions are bubbling over.
We don't know until when we'll be waiting. It's been 12 days. My loved one, I don't know where my loved one is. It's been 12 days. Where's my son? Why are you not giving me any answers?
About two-thirds of the 239 passengers on board the Malaysian Airlines flight that went missing are Chinese, and tensions were high ahead of a news conference as relatives voiced their growing anger, fear, and frustration. Two women were dragged from the daily media briefing by Malaysian police and forcibly removed after trying to unfurl a banner. One was knocked over in the confusion.
I hope, then I appeal to everybody that though we understand their concerns, we are trying our very best. And it is heart-wrenching, even for me.
During the briefing, investigators say they've received some radar data as they continue searching for the missing jetliner. And they are now investigating deleted data from the pilot's flight simulator.
Some data has been deleted from the simulator, and forensic work to retrieve this data is ongoing. I would like to take this opportunity to state that the passengers, the pilots, and the crew remain innocent until proven otherwise.
And you will see that it's also moved a little way east.
Australia continues to search in the southern Indian Ocean for the missing flight, as China's foreign ministry announces it has found no sign of the missing plane in Chinese territory.
Her Majesty Queen Rania visited the SOS village in Irbid, where she joined mothers and children to mark Mother's Day on Friday. The Queen called on the house of Mama Fatima, a mother who spent 15 years raising children in the village and was following up on those who graduated from the village and are pursuing their studies at universities. She talked with the mothers and aunts about their roles in bringing up children and offering them affection, care, and a maternal feeling of safety. They told stories about the bonds between mothers and aunts and the children living together in a family environment. Queen Rania praised mothers and aunts for the positive difference they made in the lives of the children. She voiced her pride in the cooperation between the Amman Fund for the Future of Orphans and SOS Villages to enable the children to achieve their goals and become pioneers in their communities. The SOS Villages were established in the Kingdom in 1987 to provide care for orphans and underprivileged children up to 14 years of age. Majlis al-Jinn is a huge cave located in the mountains of Oman. It is so large that it's estimated to be big enough to swallow up the Great Pyramid of Giza. Only a few cave researchers have had the opportunity to visit the cave, but so far nobody has ever tried to climb out of it. Two climbers, one German, one American, ventured to take on the cave earlier this month. They hoped to complete their ascent in 7 days, but gave themselves a window of 2 weeks to complete their feat. Locals came to watch the final stages of the grueling assault that saw the two climbers battling a lack of sunlight along with exhaustion. Nevertheless, they successfully emerged from the caves to the cheering of crowds. We start with NBA action. LeBron James scored 43 points to lead the Miami Heat over the Cleveland Cavaliers 196. James netted 25 points, nailed 4 three-point attempts, and scored 16 points before missing a shot to start the game. However, it was Chris Bosh who added the firepower for the Heat by making 12 of his 21 points in the fourth quarter. Jared Jack scored 22 points and Dion Waiters added 17 points and 11 assists for the Cavs.
Tremendous rejection. LeBron James, wow. Watch this again. Oh my. I love that. Comes over to help. Yeah.
Olympiacos have no intention of sitting back to defend their 2-goal advantage, but plan to heap more misery on Manchester United in the second leg of their Champions League tie. Victory for the Greek side, who come with a 2-0 lead from the first leg 3 weeks ago, would end United's hopes for landing any silverware this season. If Olympiacos do score, they will break new ground, having failed to net in their 2 previous matches. There was uncertainty whether striker Javier Saviola would be fit to start the match, as the Argentine did not take part in the training session yesterday. And finally, cold and cloudy tonight with northwesterly light to moderate winds. Tomorrow, a slight rise in temperatures expected. Therefore, it will be fair in the hilly areas and warm in the rest of the country. Winds will be southeasterly to northwesterly moderate. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect a cool night and hot tomorrow, with northerly moderate winds and slightly choppy seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. To end the news, here's a reminder of our top stories. Jordan and Kuwait agree on steps to regulate military cooperation. Syrian rebels storm a prison in Dir'a and free inmates amid tensions on the border with the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. And the crisis in Ukraine's Crimea region escalates, with NATO Secretary General accusing Russia of trying to redraw the map of Europe. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news. I'm Nancy Khair. Thank you for watching and have a good night.